All right, we are good to go. Mona Sobhani, welcome to the Edge broadcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right, well, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, and that's spirituality. Uh, and I guess the question of whether or not spiritual phenomena exist, maybe we'll delve into that pretty deeply tonight with you. You've got your book on the subject, and uh, I think that looking into spiritual phenomena is sort of an exciting thing to do because that entails a whole group of different things as far as that goes. Could be angelic visitations. It could be ghosts. That's a big circle, and there's a lot of things in there. But Mona Sobhani, before we get going, I want you to sort of introduce yourself to the Edge audience.
Yeah, sure. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist by training, and then I had just a series of life events that made me reevaluate my worldview. And I kind of write about the process of, changing my beliefs, flipping my worldview, and reading a lot of different books and finding evidence that helped me get there. All of that's in the book
Hmm.
that I wrote.
Okay, so was there a tipping point of spiritual activity happening to you that you said, "Well, I got to put this stuff in a book," or how did that kind of get to that point?
It's so it's nothing exciting like you
Okay.
mentioned, like angel visits or ghosts, because I never want to see like an entity. I feel like I would freak out.
Mm-hmm.
But no, for me it was, I'm Persian, so in our culture we have a like in our cultural heritage we have a tradition of divination. You can use, anything for that, like tarot or other things. But in our family, my grandmother used to use coffee grounds, this like special kind of coffee. It's not like American coffee. That you drink it, you leave the grounds in the cup, you flip it, and then you let it dry. And there's pictures that emerge. And if you're lucky to have someone who's like a good intuitive reader, like my grandmother was, they can like tell you about your past, present, and future. And so my mom learned this from her mom, and this has always been going on in our house, or in our, you know, all of our family parties and family gatherings. And so I never paid attention to it because I was, well, first of all, because it was just kind of there and I never really thought about it. But um, when I was in grad school, my mom started making it for me, and then she would absentmindedly read it and tell me things, and I didn't really pay attention. But then over time, I noticed that the things that she said would come true, and I couldn't explain it with my science. I mean, we don't have explanations for those things. We don't learn about those things when we're getting trained.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of took notes for like over 10 years and just observed, and just kind of was just curious, like, oh, does it, what are the factors that influence it? Of course, like I'm a scientist, so I'm like, what are the variables that influence it?
Mm-hmm.
And I just noticed that it came true. And I guess I never bothered to think about it more deeply. I just kept it separate from my science for a long time. But then I had two huge emotional events in my life that my mom had foreseen coming. And those were tipping points. And so they were, one of them was that and like usually she tries to downplay if she sees something negative. Um, but this one, she was like, I feel like I need to tell you, I think you're going to get some really bad news. And she kept saying it for weeks and weeks. And finally, I found out that one of my professors that I had worked with on one of the experiments in my dissertation, he was killed by one of the students in our program. And so it was like a really unusual event that happened. I mean, obviously, these things are not common, but the whole thing was really unusual and upsetting, obviously. And so that was the first thing that really shook me and upset me, because I was like, how could, because it was a death, it was different than any of the other readings. It was like, it was more about life and death. And so I was like, how could this information be out there in the
Mm-hmm.
universe? Like, and how can some people access it? And if it was out there, does that mean it was his fate or destiny? I had never thought about those things before, but it really upset me. Like, was on my mind, but I didn't do anything about it because I was too busy. I had a new job and, just life. So then a few years later, she saw this relationship coming into my life, and I was I guess looking back now, not that happy with the way things were going. So I kind of put a lot of hope on this relationship. And my mom kind of said, like, it looks like it'll be, good. Like it'll be positive. It'll be like a positive outcome. Anyway, we broke up. So in my mind, that was not positive. And
Can
I
be.
was upset that first of all, I was like, why were you wrong? And I was like, did something change? And then since I had placed so much hope on that, once I was gone, I felt really lost and like, I felt despair for the first time, and like it was my dark night of the soul, and I was really sad for a long time. And it wasn't really about the relationship, because I realized I'm too sad. Like it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
correlate. The amount of
Mm-hmm.
sadness doesn't correlate with the ending of the relationship really, or like the substance of it. So I was like, what else is going on? But as these things go, it took me a while to get there to the self part. And so in the meantime, I focused on what are these readings? Like, what is the information? How is it out there? How can certain people access it? And are there things, excuse me, such as fate or destiny? And so that's how it started. That's how I kind of got curious about it.
Uh, is uh, is your mom still with you?
Yes.
She read the book,
Mhm.
and what's she think?
um, she's open to all of it. I mean, it's really interesting because I found on this journey that I've been on that people kind of, not arbitrarily, but they have their reasons. They draw about like lines and boundaries about around what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
So she never takes the reading seriously. And she always, if she does, she only does readings for friends and family, but she always says it's entertainment, or don't take it too seriously. Like it has like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like sometimes if I would have a really dark, it's like if I had a dark cup, or I saw something bad, it would make me feel bad. And she's like, and then that is showing up also. So it's like a cycle. And so she's like, never take it seriously. Don't let it affect you. Um, and she stands by that. When I started reading about later, I got into reading about past lives, reincarnation, more Eastern philosophies, and I would tell her about that, and she kind of doesn't believe in that. So she would just be like, okay, well, maybe, like
Mm-hmm.
she's
Mm-hmm.
like nice and understanding, but she's not like, yeah, but she does, she's spiritual. So I think she believes more traditional.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even know.
When you say reading what?
So and my journey started with the past life regression literature. So I started reading Dr. Brian Weiss's books, and Dr. Michael Newton and Roger Wolger. So I started with those books for, I don't know, just kind of coincidentally, it ended up in my hand and I read it. And then because it was written by a psychiatrist, Many Lives, Many Masters was the first book that I read.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian Weiss is like a, well-credentialed, went to Yale and Columbia, and I was kind of a science snob. So I was like, okay, like I believe him. Like if I had
Mm-hmm.
read another, I feel, I was not into the stuff at all. So the book fell in my hands, I read it, and I was like, what am I reading? And it confused me because he was a psychiatrist. But that's what got my attention. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, this is interesting. And so I dug in to read all that literature, and then later on I got interested in, well, actually I started interviewing people, and somebody handed me a huge reading list, and they're like, there's been a lot of scientific research done on psychic phenomena, I don't know if you're aware. And then they gave
Mm-hmm.
me this huge reading list that I had to go off and read.
Well,
So that's how
Mona, you're
Mhm.
obviously well credentialed. Science isn't science. The nature of science require a truth, a thing to be repeatable in order to be accepted, and that's
Yeah.
kind of one of the philosophies there. But the idea that the the Big Bang theory is so entrenched in all levels of education is not repeatable.
It's true.
Climate change is not repeatable. We might be going through it, but it's not repeatable. It's just accepted so it seem there's a whole litany of science declarations and affirmations. I mean, including the declaration. We won't get into it too much. That in the very beginning, 2 years ago, a mask was going to stop a certain thing. You know, science declared that. So science is always making these declarations by all these credentialed researchers and academics, only to find out later. So how is it that spiritual phenomena doesn't get the same pass as far as not being repeatable in many cases?
Yeah, I think that the reason is because our, at least in Western culture, the foundation of really our whole worldview, but particularly the scientific worldview, is that mind and body and are separate, and that the physical world is made of matter, and that, yeah, like as you said, anything that is real is something that we can measure, that we can is reproducible, that that we can make a law out of, that we can come to predict and control. And because of that, this all emerged from the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, because of that separation of religion and science. And because of that time, like we had all these advancements in science, and suddenly we were able to measure and predict things and create technologies that made us feel like we could control our environments and control things. And because of that, there's just been this continued emphasis. Like we've confused technological advancement for what science is, but it's not that. The scientific method is, as you mentioned, it's just you measure, you observe, you stay open-minded, and then you continue to see what emerges. But spirituality, spiritual phenomena is elusive and hard to measure, and a lot of times it is hypocritical, because on the one hand, everything comes through our consciousness. Like even if I'm measuring temperature in a temperature of water in a test tube, I'm still perceiving that.
Mm-hmm.
But that when it comes to, like, I'm telling you I saw a figure, like whatever, an angel
Mm-hmm.
came and visited me, then science will be like, oh no, you perceived that wrong.
Mm.
Then we put less emphasis on perception. We don't trust perception.
It's
as
like
much.
kind of like saying every in the beginning, in the 70s and 80s, any UFO sighting was swamp gas. I can't believe that
Yes.
was a thing for so many years. They went and
Yeah.
they had to go.
Yeah.
Then he went. I remember the Stevensville UFO craft. It's well documented. I'm not just bringing stuff up, but it was in Texas, Stephenville, Texas, by hundreds of witnesses, preachers, doctors, lawyers, ranchers, people who have no interest in getting into the news, said they saw it and said it was about a mile wide. I remember got gaslit on that one when they said, oh, that was a reflection of another plane.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
I don't know how you go from reflection to a mile wide craft blocking out the stars. I don't know. This is gaslighting. So when science doesn't have an answer, you're going to get gaslit. But
That's true.
But now would this qualify for science? Because I at one point I was contacted by some people that had the house was haunted. Different things were going on there. So I went over there and different things happened. So to me, isn't that repeatable?
Yeah. Well, you know how these things go. Sometimes they do and they don't. And I think it's a confluence of factors too, because with everything, let's say a scientist went over to investigate that, they would first go to try to find a physical explanation, because that's the worldview, because that's what most of Western mainstream worldview and Western science is based on, is physical science. So they'll first try to find an explanation, like, I don't know, the electromagnetic field is stronger here for some
Mm-hmm.
reason, and it's messing up everyone's perception or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they go to physical things first.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is, we don't get funded for this kind of stuff. It's hard to even find a scientist to go look into this, because the reputation is going to be hit, but also there's no funding for this.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, if it was looked at more seriously, which
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be, I think that
Now
we would be able to.
There is the case of the Skinwalker Ranch, and the Skinwalker
Yes.
Ranch was investigated by the military. It was investigated by two billionaires that bought it and brought the most expensive equipment and highly trained investigators to it, and they've all declared there's UFO activity. There was cattle mutilations there.
Yeah.
They had cameras looking at other cameras, and the camera looking at the other cameras was destroyed overnight, and by the just destroyed, and the camera looking right at it and didn't see anything. So, I mean, to me, they had scientifically proven that we're either one, not alone in this universe, or two, there's spiritual phenomena. I don't know if UFOs qualify, or in one particular case, they said that a portal opened up in the middle of a field and an entity walked out. And then there's people that claim that something followed them home and was throwing bottles around in their apartment. So would that qualify as spiritual phenomena?
That's a good question. I don't, in my mind, label things with words anymore. That may sound really weird, but after doing all this reading, like about these kinds of concepts, I think because I spent so much time trying to think about, well, is psychic phenomena spiritual, or like, what is the definition of spiritual? And I just gave up basically. And I just accepted that there are things beyond language that it's hard. I know we have to put language to it to talk about it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer. And, it's funny because I spoke to some of those people when I was doing my interviews who were involved with Skinwalker, and I read the book. And I asked them that question a lot because I was mostly interested in the spiritual stuff. And I was like, I don't care about UFOs. I don't know why they keep, why do we have to talk about this? And they were trying to tell me, they're like, it's all connected. It's all connected. Like, it's all the same. And I'm like, I just don't understand. But yeah, so I don't know. So I honestly, I don't know. I don't know that anyone knows. I think that we use language because it's convenient for us, but I think that these things are beyond language.
All right. We have this question from Neil. It says, Mona, do you believe that there are two gods in biblical scripture?
I don't know. I'm not.
I can say after 23 years of doing this, I never asked that question, or that question never came across the wire. All right. Here's another one. This is from the Rose. What do you think about neuro rights? Neuro rights.
Neuro rights?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that is, actually.
I don't know what that is either. Hopefully, Rose, you can explain that a little bit better than that, because I do have to ask these questions. All right. Kentucky Girl says, do you know about Dr. Carolyn Leaf? And if so, what do you think of her work?
I'm not familiar. What does she focus on?
Okay. Well, then Kentucky Girl, if you want to focus that a little bit there, we need to make sure that we know how to ask our questions to get a good answer. By the way, Mona, we have a poll question up on our website there. It says, how much spiritual activity is happening in your life? So let's go, and the choices they have are none at all, happens every day, can't tell what's happening, and does demonic activity count? So let's check the results. All right. 87% of the people who watched this show and took this poll say that they have spiritual activity happening every day. 12% says none at all. To the nunners, to the non-believers, the naysayers, Mona, do you say what?
Well, I think everyone has their own journey. And I think the more open you are, I think the more you open to I call it the universe. The more open you are to the universe, the more it opens to you. But I also think people have different points in their journey. I mean, like, you can't force people to be open to anything that they don't want to be open to. And, maybe in time it'll become important to them and they'll open to it, but it's also not for everyone, maybe. Although it does make you healthier to have some spirituality in your life.
Did I hear you say, did you say that you don't use labels, or you don't make declarative statements? Which one did you say?
Oh, I try not to label. Well, I mean, I do it, but in my head, I don't think of them as like, this is spiritual, this is not.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, I mean, with today's culture, I mean, it just came to my mind because there's sort of this cultural battle going on out there. So if you see another woman, do you say to yourself, that's a woman, or you refrain?
Oh, No, yeah. I don't mean with everything. I
Oh,
meant
okay.
with this these deeper truths, these deeper
Okay.
universal
Deeper truths.
things.
Deeper truths. Well, now that's an
Yeah.
interesting question because here, as I said, I've been doing this for about 23 years and had thousands of guests, whatever. And I think this is the longest running show on the internet because it's 2003. Okay. I challenge all the other people that interviewed you because I looked at them,
Yeah.
how long their show's been going. But anyway, um, so truth. I've heard over time from different guests and different spheres that everyone has a truth or everyone has their own truth type of thing. Is there a singular truth? Because is it not true that if a person's truth say that the sun is green, that is their truth, another one says it's yellow or gold, whatever it really is. They both say that's my truth, but is it true that they're both true, or can that sun only be one color? And I'm using that for all topics of truth.
Yeah.
How can it be truth if different people have different truths? How could anything be truth?
Yeah. That's a really philosophical, deep question. But I could say from a I'm like thinking of how to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
But from a science perspective, I mean, so if you like, we all have different, we all perceive our world through our five or six or however
Mm-hmm.
many senses that we
Mm-hmm.
have.
Okay.
And so but some people don't have certain color receptors, right,
Mm-hmm.
in their eyes, or like their hearing is not as good as other people or whatever. Like these are obvious examples. Um, and so I think the way that traditionally, and this actually goes back to your first question of why science is this. So, like, I think the Western worldview kind of converged on, hey, let's just agree that the thing that's the most common or that's the average, that's the most frequently reported is probably the truth. And then but in actuality, I mean, everyone perceives the world differently. Even in neuroscience, I wrote about this in the book a little bit. Everyone's reality is super different from each other's because our brain
Mm-hmm.
is predicting every second of it's using your past
Right.
experiences, your personality, your family, to predict how something's going to come out, and it drives your behavior in that way. And so everyone's reality is different already in that way. We
Mm-hmm.
perceive events. Oh my God, the best example is if you ever listen to like true crime, which I love true crime stories, and they interview a bunch of people around one event, and everyone's explanation is totally different, right? And they'll be like, oh, he was being really suspicious in the corner, and then someone else would be like, no, he was laughing and having a good time. So everyone's perceptions are different. So there is no easy answer to that question. I think we're just doing the best.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought about that a lot too, because I think that I do think the universe is participatory, and I feel like you do get more of what you believe.
Okay. I think to earlier question, somebody said that do you believe in psychology through neuroscience? I guess maybe that might have been the Carolyn Leaf thing. Psychology through neuroscience.
Yeah, well, I am a neuroscientist, so yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that it's the best model that we have for thinking about our behavior.
So you're just the person I want to ask this question to, being a neuroscientist, as you are, and fully accredited, by the way, at the most prestigious universities. Um, where do dreams come from?
Um, do you want the neuroscience answer or
Well, I'll tell you what. Give me the neuroscientist answer, and then give me the Mona Sobhani
the new
proof
answer?
of spiritual phenomena answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, dreams come from um neuroscience actually doesn't know where dreams come from. We don't have an answer to that, but we believe that it's your brain cleaning up neural connections and getting rid of things you don't need, and kind of like reviewing things that you are thinking about, maybe in your subconscious, or things that have happened in your day. And for whatever reason, they, emerge in this hodgepodge at night. But the truth is, we don't really know. Um, but I think dreams are that, because I actually I keep a dream journal. I watch my dreams very closely because sometimes I have precognitive dreams. So sometimes I think that I think there are deeper levels of our reality, or like other levels that our five senses can't perceive, but that are there. And so I think sometimes in any altered state of consciousness, which can include sleeping, I think that sometimes we have access to those realms.
Is it possible dreams come from outside?
Yeah. From outside where? From outside
Of
yourself?
yourself, outside of yourself?
Um, I mean, you're still perceiving it. So it's coming through you. But I guess if your consciousness is multidimensional, then I guess, yeah, I guess it could be coming from somewhere else.
Hmm. All right. This is a sort of religious question somebody just put in here. Do you believe that Jesus lived and is still alive?
I do not have any, I don't know.
The way you framed that, the way you said that kind of remind me of Jodie Foster in Contact when they asked, do you believe in God? And she goes, well, as a scientist, I can't say there's conclusive evidence
Right, yeah.
either way, you know?
Exactly. That'd be my answer to everything.
Do you claim that answer? Will you accept that as a reasonable answer
Yeah,
from
exactly.
yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I really don't, I haven't really thought about it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, that gets back to spiritual phenomena and spiritual proof. Some people say that that Jesus accepting him into their life had changed their life completely. I mean, that's certainly a part of rehabilitation in prisons.
Yeah.
There is data. We're talking about data here. I mean, Jodie Foster
Yeah.
said there's not data either way. Well, there is data that says that recidivism, if I can say that right, I'm a cowboy, so I can slip up with words, you see, because I spend a lot of time in the range roping cows and stuff. So, but anyway,
I could tell.
um, that recidivism is much less for those who are going to the church inside and reading the Bible. There's absolute actionable proof there. Wouldn't that qualify in the scientific terms that there is something to that name or the belief in that name?
Yeah, I mean, I briefly mentioned earlier, and it's true. I think there's a lot of scientific evidence. There's a lot of scientific evidence that spirituality improves health and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
So belief in something and trusting and having faith, it seems to like lower stress and anxiety, and improve our behavior, improve our feelings of connection with each other and with society more broadly. So I do think so. I do believe in archetypes. And when I was interviewing some of the people for my book, I remembered one of the intuitives that I interviewed. She told me one time, she's like, oh, I've seen Jesus. And then I was like, oh, are you Christian? And she's like, no, I'm Jewish. She's like, she's like, I never believed in Jesus. She's like, I didn't even think about it, but I've seen him. And so, yeah, I mean, I believe in archetypal things like that.
Mm-hmm. So it seems that for in that realm that there in human the human condition itself has some void maybe that's built into it, and that maybe this interaction in researching into spiritual things, which would include Bible, of course, is going into that space, making that person more a complete person, probably even, I dare say, a better person, one who's got more empathy for others and the conditions of the poor. Certainly, when you look at all the illegal immigrants coming into the country, it is religious organizations that are supplying the aid and taking these people in by and large. Not, I mean, certainly there's some, sort of atheistic, neutral government type, non-spiritual organizations as well. But by and large, it's those that have a faith-centric belief, and all these people are getting help because of it. So that's what I could say. It seemed like there's something there that some round peg that goes into a round hole that's in the human soul or the spirit that makes that person more complete. So therefore, I feel it's wise to research into spiritual phenomena like you have done. Now, so I think you kind of said that nothing really particularly spiritual has happened to you. You're just, as a scientist, saying that the spiritual phenomena exists. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
besides,
I've
but
had,
your mom's story, I think that was your progenitor to get you heading in the
right.
right direction, right?
Yeah. That kicked it off. Well, I'm trying to think if I've had any um I mean, I had one, I mean, if you want a story.
Yeah, sure. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. I had so this is actually before my transformation. This is before I started reading anything. This was right in the middle of the dark night of the soul where I was like just really sad and isolating myself. And one particularly dark night, when I was wishing that I wasn't alive.
Oh,
um, I was, uh, I think I fell asleep on my bed, but I hadn't like gone to bed. Like I had just fallen asleep.
okay.
And then I woke up to somebody saying my name very loudly in my ear. Like it was like someone was in the room with me.
Mhm.
And it was like a beautiful voice. And they kind of said it in like a, I don't know how to explain the way they said it, but it was just like a Mona, like get up. And I woke up because I thought someone was in the room with me. And I was like, oh my God, this is weird. I got up, and then the first thought I had was that was an angel. And I was not spiritual. I was not religious. I didn't believe in angels at all. Um, but it all kind of happened in that like between wake and sleep state. And I just kind of woke up and I was like, what was that? And then I went to bed, but in the morning I called my mom, and my mom is spiritual in that way. So I told her,
Mhm.
and she was like, yeah, that was an angel. And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't believe it, but I was like, but it was weird. It was weird because it was very loud. It's never happened to me before.
Mhm.
It's never happened to me since.
Mhm.
And it was like a very dark night. But it did kind of wake me up, and it was kind of like a emotional nudge
Mhm.
to stop.
Well, I mean, you're kind of describing what happens to people that have near death experiences. Many of them are that I've read and had on the show began as non-spiritual, non-believing type. Even rabid people that have described themselves. My guests have described themselves as rabid atheists. And would mock anybody that demonstrated any level of faith, antagonistic toward them. But then they had a near-death experience. So, I'm thinking, well, if I've got to learn something myself, I'd rather not have a near death experience because it's near and it may go all the way. You might not
Right.
come back. So you better get it right. Better get this thing right now when you on this side of the ground, you know, because you may not have a chance that way. But no, so traumatic events, I mean, even accidents may
Mm-hmm.
be the director of us sort of awakening from our
Mm-hmm.
slumber that hey, I got to go to work, I got to go to Walmart, I got to pay my bills, and that's your life, and then you check out. I mean, I'm thinking that there's a whole lot more going on here, and so I'd rather a kinder, gentler wake up call myself. But I feel like
Right.
if I'm looking now, I think I told this to the guest last week. If you're making bad links in your life that follow you into eternity, bad decisions and bad behavior, it's best to correct them now, so you don't have that on the other side. But anyway, you said in the first hour in your opening, you're Persian, right?
Yes.
Now, are they the ones that believe in the jinn, or
Um,
is or is that,
I,
or is that
I don't know actually, but I think that's Arab culture,
Arab
Arabic
culture? Okay,
culture.
okay. Well then, all right. So, do Persians have a sort of belief like that? Like do they have a? I guess in the Protestant world, they have angels. The
Yeah,
Arabics have said that's not the right term. So
that's
there's,
a really
but
good question.
yeah.
Yeah, well, Iran got infiltrated by the Arab invasion like in the early, I don't know, 600, I don't know, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm really bad with history. I don't know years, whatever. But whenever
Mm-hmm.
they got invaded, and then Islam came, and so I think that but it's funny that you mentioned that because I was actually originally Persians were Zoroastrians, and I now want to go back and learn about Zoroastrianism because I feel like that's our true heritage. So
Mhm.
I don't actually know. I wish I knew, but I will tell you one of the intuitives that I interviewed, that same one that told me she saw Jesus,
Mhm.
she said she's seen jinns before, and I didn't know what that meant. I was like, what's a jinn? And she's like, like a genie. I was like,
Okay.
okay.
All right. This is from our moderator. Do you believe that acting happy, even if you may not be, can cause your life to become happier and more fulfilling?
I think in some ways, yes. But I think that if you, which all of us do, have underlying and deep rooted traumas or sadnesses, like we hang on to these emotions,
Mhm.
they're there. They're like in our nervous systems. And so true happiness, true peace, and true fulfillment, until you can express those and get, work through those things,
Mhm.
I don't think you can have true personally. But I do think acting happy, I think of course people will respond to you in a better way, like they'll treat you nicer. I think
Mhm.
in certain scenarios it can help you be happier for
Mhm.
sure.
All right. This is from Bear. He gives he is a he brings us what we call the Bear Report just before our guest comes on, and he brings us good news of the week. And we'd like to say he brings us our good news booster shot because everybody needs a booster shot of good news in this life. But here's a question for you. He says, Mona, being a neuroscientist, if you could do any experiment, what would it be, and what would you be trying to learn?
I'm really interested in are you familiar with psychedelics at all?
Uh, well, I haven't ingested any lately, but I think we actually have a question on that coming up. So let's get into it.
Oh,
What about
okay.
psychedelics?
Yeah. Well, I've been really into psychedelics because they're one of those altered states that I mentioned that
Hmm.
I love altered states of consciousness because for me, they're where the spiritual and the paranormal and the personal healing all happen. So in those states, you can have all these things occur to you. And so there there's a certain psychedelic called DMT,
Hmm. Yeah,
dimethyltryptamine,
right.
and that one is short, fast acting. You smoke a 20-minute high, but it's one that blows you into another somewhere else, another consciousness. And a lot of times there people report encountering aliens, elves, angels, fairies, jinns,
Hmm.
gnomes, and communicating with them and getting information from them. But a lot of times they're bringing messages of love for humanity and messages to take better care of the earth. But if I could, and I actually think somebody's going to do this study at University of College London if it gets funded,
Hmm.
but I would be really interested to explore that space with those
Hmm.
entities. I think that would be
Yeah,
really interesting.
we had guests on the show that did that, and I even had a guest that went down to South America to a tribe, but some of them report though, Mona, that like giant spiders are crawling around too. Now that's the cowboy don't like spiders. Okay, can't deal with that. So man, I may stay away from it just for that. Giant spiders crawling around, man. There's
Yeah.
that Lord of the Rings scene where that giant spider comes
Oh,
out and
yes.
wraps him up and ejects
Yeah.
him. Man, I don't want that happening to me.
Yeah. I don't blame you. And you never know what you're going to get on a psychedelic trip, honestly.
Neurosciences have determined that the brain is programmed to seek what it experiences the most. So the more if you act
Sure.
happy more than unhappy, the brain will seek out happiness. It's kind of, I kind of want to attract happiness to myself. I don't want to attract unhappiness, but some people, um, I see them in public, and my determination is, I wouldn't say I judge them, but I evaluate the circumstance and behavior, and I come to the conclusion that they are trying to exhibit that they are happy when I can tell, frankly, that they're completely miserable.
Yeah.
Um, and so that would be sort of what I would call a spiritual parasite. There are people that are miserable; they want you to be miserable too. So if you have a spiritual parasite in your life, how can you tell that it's damaging you by maintaining that space in your life for them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, our bodies tell us a lot of like, but we don't pay a lot of attention to our breathing or like how tense we get. But it's like if you have someone in your life that you don't look forward to seeing them, when you're around them, you're like tense and uncomfortable and don't feel good, your breathing is shallow. That's probably a pretty good sign that that person's not very good for your health. Unfortunately, sometimes those people are like in our families
Mm-hmm.
or close friends or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then what to do with that is a whole other discussion. But I think a lot of times I think that your body can give you a lot of clues. Like sometimes our conscious minds are like, it's somebody you care about. So you're like, no, I love seeing them. But I think your body will really tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm. All right. I see our moderator in our live chat says, she says, I choose to be happy. So people watching the show, if you choose to be happy, put that in the live chat too. Just I do or something like that real quickly so they can scroll through there. Let's see if anybody else is looking to be happy. But happiness is, I don't know if that can be titled a spiritual phenomenon. I guess it would be a spiritual phenomenon because it seems like the unhappy people outnumber the happy ones. And people allow things to make them unhappy. And with the sort of cultural wars, I mentioned that earlier, going on, I mean, that's just creating whole groups of unhappy people. People can't be happy if this person is elected, and they can't be happy if that person is elected. You got this going on all the time. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. Is happiness a spiritual phenomena, or what would you label that as?
I really, really love that idea. I really love that idea. Happiness is a spiritual phenomena that you can tap into anytime you need it. I mean, I know it's hard, but I think that through cultivating spiritual practices, whatever that means for you, which I think for different people, it's different things.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can get in touch with that because it is a state, right? Happiness is an emotional state, but all of our emotional states are probably spiritual in some way. I really believe that.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a commercial that I've seen watching football the other day. A guy is driving and he's got his little girl in the back seat and he drives past a gas station and it shows the gas price and he swears and then she got this little jar and puts it in front of him. It says swear jar. See, and so he's driving, he's got to drop something in there and then he's driving and then he comes to another gas station and the price is even higher. And then she puts that another swear jar there. So I'm thinking, well, I've been depressed like that. I mean, I become unhappy when I see the gas prices. So I think I need to reframe that and think, well, here I'm in the Midwest, and you might wonder how there's a cowboy in the Midwest. Well, we got cowboys here too, but I gotta think. Well, California's paying $6-7 a gallon. Is that where you're from? Where you at? So
California.
how much is your gas out there?
Yeah, it shot up recently, like the last 2 weeks. Now it's like maybe $5 or $6. I'm not sure. I haven't filled
Mm-hmm.
my tank in like a week or 2 weeks,
Well,
but yeah, I think it's like six.
yeah, ours is a miserable $3.99.
Oh my God, I would
And
I haven't seen
so
3.99 in years.
so isn't that just you talk in the first hour? You talk about perception of what
Yeah.
truth is. Well, the truth is that's a much lower price than what the West Coast is paying. So I really shouldn't be unhappy. And you could say, gee, I'm only paying 5 or 6, but Europe is paying 8 and 9.
Yeah.
So again, that's perception. I guess there's somebody's always worse off. But even if there wasn't, I mean, we don't want to miseries. We don't want to be
Yeah,
hoping
imagine
for
it's
that.
like
But
you have to get gas. It's like what are you every time you get gas, are you going to be upset?
mhm.
It's hard.
Right, and so there is a sort of and just a really everyday look at how, as we just agreed that happiness is a spiritual phenomena, that if we want spiritual phenomena to happen in our life, then we need to do those mundane little thought changes.
Yeah.
As Jay said in the live chat, I choose to be happy. So when that price say, hey, you know what? Praise God, I got money to pay for that high price. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a good way of looking at it too. And, you know,
I
so,
mean, yeah, I love that you're saying that because I really, really try to practice gratitude to the extremes. And like, I may be a weirdo, but like in everything throughout my day, I'll find things, even if I'm if I sometimes I'm just happy that I can hear sounds. Like if I'm in the kitchen moving around, like I'll take a moment to even appreciate the fact that I can hear the running water, you
Mm-hmm.
know, or like in the if I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I'm grateful to be waking up in my bed and not a hospital bed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
little things like that will quickly shift your
Mm-hmm.
perspective.
Yeah, I've said on this show when I was on Facebook, I got off all social media. Rumble is the only thing I'm on now, but because I just feel like it's too combative out there. So I just didn't want to participate. You talk about being unhappy there. I mean, there's letting people you don't even know, they could say
I
something
know.
and affect your attitude. I mean, why would we allow anything to affect us like that? But it's hard to push it away and and walk happy thoughts all the time, but walk out happy thoughts. But
Yeah.
I when I was on Facebook, this meme came through, and it was a picture of somebody in Africa who had two empty Coke bottles flattened down, attached under their feet with a rope for their shoes, and the caption said, "Are you sure you're having a bad day?" You know.
Yeah.
So you gotta look. You be unthankful. I think. But there you go. I think we just added the second one. Happiness is a spiritual phenomenon, and being thankful is a spiritual phenomenon.
Very much.
And both
Yeah.
of those go against the culture because people take advantage of your unhappiness. They want to use your unhappiness as a motivator for you to do certain things they want you to do, and in the end, they're the beneficiaries of that. We have to know that we are being manipulated every time we read an article, every time we hear somebody coming across the television. They want you to buy something, they want you to think something. And if they're able to manipulate you without you even knowing it, that's the height of it, and they can walk away laughing, uh, then they're going to be the beneficiaries and you're going to be the loser of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think that just using these mental reframing techniques and switching your perspective and kind of trying to ground yourself in the little moments of happiness, even if they're fleeting, but you can keep bringing them back, right? But I agree. I mean, I'm so over this culture of consumerism. I'm just so over it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know when we're going to realize that buying things will not make us
But
happy.
wait. If you go to Macy's and spend $60, then you can get a $5 gift, and
No,
it's
I
like,
know.
wait a minute, I got to spend that much money, and then I got to go spend something to get something. I mean, that's kind of a losing situation there. Um,
No, it goes back to what you said that really what humans like the holes in us are not going to be filled with material things. Like it's really transcendence, right? Or feeling connected to other people. Even when we look at health studies, like outcomes for chronic illnesses, the things that really matter are community and connection,
mhm.
um, and just spirituality.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the great Dalai Lama, he's walking around in a bed sheet, but every time you see him, he's got this big old grin on his face.
So happy, I know.
And he didn't have nothing. I think he got a show on YouTube now, though. I don't know.
Oh
I
no,
mean,
no,
even the great
avoid the
yogi,
YouTube comments section. Never show him those.
even the great yogi's got to get some cash sometime. I think the Beatles went there. Beatles went to India. They were seeking the great yogi
Yeah,
inspiration there, and then they found out that the great yogi was charging them all kinds of money that wasn't authorized.
I know. There's
So
like wherever there's humans, there's
okay,
corruption.
so now we're looking at this. Your book is in our background, of course, but it says proof of spiritual phenomena.
The
What proof do you
publisher
have?
chose the publisher chose the title, but well, the way that honestly, the publisher chose the title, and
Mm-hmm.
I had to I had to make it work. But the the book tells the story of how I started this journey having these experiences, and then I went to look for scientific proof. I wanted the studies, the equation, the evidence that psychic phenomena was real, and then eventually that spirituality was real. Because then I was reading about, like maybe our consciousness is not constrained to our minds. Maybe we're all connected in other ways. So it started off looking for scientific proof, and then over time I do talk about in the book that I had a lot of experience while I was meditating. I had precognitive visions, I had precognitive dreams, and so I had a lot of and I had so many amazing out of this world intuitive readings, people telling me things from my past there's no way they could know. So ultimately I just kind of hit this crisis point but then I'm like, you know what? Like, I want to add personal proof. I mean, proof is a strong word. We never use that in science, but
Mm-hmm.
personal proof to the toolbox, because yes, scientific evidence is nice to have, but like as we talked about, you can't, I don't know, you can't measure everything, and that doesn't mean that my experience is wrong, right? It doesn't mean that I'm misperceived all those dreams or created meaning from all those intuitive readings. Like, that's not true either. So that's what the title came to mean for me. It's that that there's different kinds of proof for everyone, and that the scientific method is wonderful, but it can't measure everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you personally, looking at the title myself, proof of spiritual phenomena, whether or not there's actual proof or not, the word proof there was encouraging when I read it. I was my happiness meter went, oh, somebody's got proof, man. So something that I believe myself, now somebody's got proof. So if somebody says, hey, Daniel, you don't got no proof, I say, yeah, but some people writing books about it, so there's got to be a proof out there. All right, in your researching spiritual phenomena, what is your explanation for answered prayers?
Oh, I love that question. Um, for answered prayers. So I don't know that I mean I have an answer, but I do think that as I mentioned, I do believe the universe is participatory, or meaning that like we are connected to it, and that it's, I mean, I think of it like as a cosmic intelligence or something like that. Although I'm
Mm-hmm.
constantly learning and changing my
Mm-hmm. Okay.
ideas, but
Okay.
so I do think that if you ask with sincerity for things, I mean, obviously not every prayer is answered.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that if the conditions are right, and don't ask me what that means because I don't know,
Okay.
I think that sometimes they're answered, but I think a lot of times just the asking is very hard for people for some reason. Sometimes it's hard to even know what to ask for. So I actually think there's like taking a moment to congratulate yourself for even finding the right thing to ask for is a beautiful thing too, because getting to that this journey, right, to get to know to what to ask for
Mm-hmm.
is even something, and shows, in my opinion, shows the universe that you're thinking about a direction that you're heading, and you're asking for guidance and help,
Mm-hmm.
and I do think that it responds to that.
Mm-hmm. I think a measurement of where we are could be that when we do ask, uh, if the prayer seems to be all about us, if within that prayer we don't mention somebody else maybe first, but if not, at least in the conversation, the prayer conversation, hey, now I'll use God here and I'll say, God, man, I really wish you could help my bees produce honey, because I'm a beekeeper, by the way. And
Oh, cool.
but maybe I should say, Lord, I know there's a beekeeper that all his bees died. Could you help him out? And if you got some extra stuff, could you, I mean, it's just saying you that's
I
kind of
love that.
kind
I
of too.
love that.
So it just seems kind of where you are now. In the second case, I'm not particularly there, but I am aware if I'm always saying, what can I get something without thinking of others first? You can't trick you say you use the word universe, okay, and I'll say God, just for a lot of people
Sure.
listening, it's easier to accept that way, and we won't argue the difference there, but um, there you're being heard and it's going somewhere, and so if you might get a little, there might be something a little extra. It may your prayer might be more answered than if you weren't so selfish in the prayer. I guess is what I'm saying.
I like that idea, and you're probably right. I do think that yeah, and I think in our Western, we can culture kind of focus on ourselves a lot, but I think but yeah, I think we shouldn't do that. I think we should realize we're more connected, and that anything you wish for others, yeah, like you would hope that they would wish for you too. So I
Hmm.
love that idea.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's some people that we're missing, the great yogi and all them people. There are people that think of others, that give from their lack rather from their abundance. That's another. I'm talking about measurements where we are. Okay,
Mhm.
so I admit, my shortcomings that I don't think of somebody else first most of the time, but I know that I should. So I'm moving in that direction. I want to move in that direction. I'm speaking it out. I'm here, let myself hear myself say that, but I don't always. So, but if you're just kind of searching, kind of moving in a direction, you can tell where you're at. If you're already there, then if you're already there, you think of others before you say your personal prayer. Then I would say that's probably a more spiritual person, and a person that is maybe doesn't need to have
Yeah.
another life to work it out.
Um,
They might be already there.
I love that. And actually, this is great because I just thought of something I read this week that I loved that is is ties back to the happiness that we were talking about earlier. So I was reading, there's this like list I found. Someone sent me a link. It's like 50 things that you can do for others that will make you feel happier. And I guess some
Mm-hmm.
research has shown that doing things for others and being of service to others actually makes you feel amazing. But there was all these really cute things, and it's got me thinking all week about it. Like you could, if you buy coffee, pay for the person behind you, or if you go to a restaurant, pick up the tab of like another table. And I actually saw an article that happened at a diner on Christmas Eve. Like a couple started it, and then the whole restaurant just kept doing it throughout the night. Like everyone picked
Wow.
up someone else's tab. And I just loved that idea so much. And I thought, just imagine if we all did that for each other all the
Mm-hmm.
time. Like you'd get surprises, throughout
Mm-hmm.
the day or throughout
Mm-hmm.
your week. And it does feel really good to do things for other people, right? When they're not expecting it.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, full of gratitude, and it makes you feel good, and then you've helped
Well,
somebody. So
well,
it's great.
there may not be scientific proof for that, but certainly I think we can all agree that's a truth. I think that's a truth. We were looking for a truth in
Yeah.
different subjects. I think that's a truth, and it always seems that you receive more than you ever give. Um, and I'll tell you what, though. Here, let me
Mhm.
give you a story. You mentioned paying for coffee. So I've done that, and it's a great deal. Go through that drive-through and say, I want to pay for the person behind it. Now, I don't stick around because I feel like if I'm getting a blessing somewhere, I don't want to announce it because then it'd be selfish, and I'm trying to barter with the universe, or barter with God, and say, look how good I am. I don't want any of that. I want to drop a good deed. I want to drop a blessing and move and get out and just let whatever
Yeah.
happens and not even think about it, because if you do, then that's a selfish reason in and of itself. I don't want to
Right.
do that for selfish reasons, and I don't want to
Right.
do it for self-aggrandizement either. So I don't even like talking about it to you, but I do want to say what happened in one instance, because I want people to be thinking that way. That's part of this show. Um, so I paid for the person behind it, took off, and I ended up getting caught at a light. The person behind me caught me at the light, and I try to get across that light because I don't want any gratitude. That's not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But he rolled down the window. And said, hey, 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 hey! I said, yeah. What's up? He goes, you'll not believe it. I go, what? He goes, I was in the drive-through and I realized I forgot my wallet. I didn't have any money to pay.
Oh my
And they
gosh.
said, the guy ahead of you just paid for it. He said, I can't believe this happened to me. So,
Wow.
and that's where we need to head for. That's where it's spiritual. That's why I see spiritual
That's
phenomena
beautiful.
as a reason to be alive and to have that part of your life that's more of that than less of the consumerism, like you said, suggested earlier. I think that gives you a better internal happiness. There's so many benefits from that. So, all right. So,
Yeah.
do
I
you
love that.
have a tip? We've mentioned. I guess we're giving some tips about how to proceed, and we've mentioned that happiness is a spiritual phenomena, and Thanksgiving is thinking of others. That didn't have a specific title, but that sounds like I'm putting everything under that title, man. I'm connecting to this whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, so, as from a scientist, you battle with you would. It seems like you would have your scientific mind, and you would have your sort of spiritual mind, and they've got
Mhm.
to reason and battle things out in your life. Which one is kind of ahead right now?
I think it goes back and forth, but I mean, I try to keep them even. And yeah, I mean, I try to keep them even. I mean, I think a balance of both is important. and sometimes I like originally when I went through this thing, oh my God, my scientific brain was killing me. And actually that's one of the biggest insights I had was why do we kill these meaningful spiritual moments for ourselves just because the worldview or whatever, like Western mainstream culture, like laughs off spirituality, like if I have a huge coincidence or the angel voice story, like I brushed it off. I could have reveled in it. I could have felt comforted. And at the time I don't know that I did. But if I tell you, if that happened to me now, I would let it comfort me and I would allow it. And so my biggest like thing to people is embrace the mystical, the spiritual, whatever it is. I mean, keep one foot on earth, but don't deprive yourself of those beautiful moments of meaning because they're meant for us, I think.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned in the first hour what you described as a dark night, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I don't know how long was it? Were you referring to a single night, or were you talking?
Oh no, the dark night of the soul. No, that was like a year. It was a very
Okay.
long night.
Well, that's great because that's where my question was leading to. I thought, well, okay, you had a dark night, but for some, they're in a position where they are having dark years, and
Yeah.
they would have to make a dramatic decision to end dark, those dark years. Uh, how do you know when to, or if you should at all?
To end it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by end it?
Well, I guess in this case here, we're talking about a relationship.
Oh.
Didn't that what you said yours was, a dark night relationship issue?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Was it forced upon you, or did you end the dark night?
No, it was he left. So left the country.
Okay.
So yeah, it was, and it
Now
wasn't
that's a
the
hard question. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to get that question. So if you want to take a pass, go right ahead.
I mean, I I don't know. It was I mean, I have come to be appreciative of the event, right? I have come to look at it as the greatest teacher of my life,
Hmm.
even though I wish I had never had to go through it, right? But for me, it woke me up to it was the relationship that was the event, but it wasn't that really the problem. The problem was that I was missing all of this from my life, right? It's that I didn't embrace these meaningful moments. I didn't find meaning in anything. That was my crisis. Was I would wake up every day and say, "What is the point of all of this? What is the point of all of this?"
Hmm.
Because the Western worldview or the scientific vision of the universe is that it's dead, random, and meaningless. And so when you are in crisis, and then you're told that your crisis is random, sorry, that's your
Hmm.
problem,
Hmm.
and to get out of it you need to find meaning for yourself. I mean, just talk about digging yourself into more despair. Like, how is that comforting? It's not. And so that just that event woke me up to that was what was making me sad. That's what was the problem,
Hmm.
because in times of challenge I didn't have any framework to understand why am I going through this challenge.
Hmm.
But now I do. Now I think it's for me, it's for growth. It'll make me better. Like, life is for happiness and
Hmm.
also for challenges. It's impossible that we'll go through life without challenges, but it's what you make of it, right?
Hmm.
um so for me, that's what it was. I don't know if that answered your question, but
Well, yeah, I don't want to go down too far there because I don't want to be saying something on the show that's going to make somebody make a decision and say, "Hey, man, I heard it on the edge, and they said I should do this."
no,
So I don't want that going on.
I would just say hang in there. And I mean, like, I think that if you can, it's what we talked about too. It's that mental reframing. If you can find a reason for whatever situation is for, like, there's a way that you can think about it that will help you move forward. There
Mhm.
always is.
Mhm. Um, Now, have you ever read the Bible?
Parts of it in
Okay, because
college.
we were
Yeah.
just talking about. I gave you that life example there of that Starbucks thing, but there's one scripture in there that says, "Give and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaking together." so much so that you cannot contain it. Now that I did, I paid for that coffee, but I didn't get payment back the later in the day. Uh, Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, in the monetary sense. But I did in the wow sense, in the life sense, in the a light was shined on my path. You're heading in the right direction, Daniel. Path. That's what I got. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. So much so I couldn't even contain it. I couldn't believe that happened, and I could have very easily thought not to do it. And in fact, to be honest with you, I almost did it because I saw the person was driving a Cadillac. I was thinking, no, I want to get us a beat up truck. I started deciding what kind of vehicle. Now I thought, no, wait, what are you thinking, Daniel? Just do it, okay? Just do it like it is. Don't be trying to manipulate this thing if you're going,
Right,
So,
right.
but again, when I'm talking about, I talked earlier about self measurement of where I am. Well, I that was a hard lesson for me. So I've moved on, and now I won't do that again. But but I had to go through that thought process to creep up a
Right.
little bit to have right thinking. But anyway, the returns for spiritual phenomena, the returns for doing random acts of kindness may not come to you monetarily, but there's something worth much more than that, and that's your personal happiness and well-being.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah.
And I was in a nursing home one time, and I was telling this story here that seemed like there's two kinds of people in there. I mean, I saw people that had the exact same condition in a wheelchair, and one person would be really, "You're trying to get me. What are you doing here?" And then another one would maybe be missing an arm and giving me happiness and thankfulness when I'm trying to do something for them, and I end up getting the receiving. So wait, this is not supposed to go like this. I'm supposed to be, bring some cheer to you, and I end up getting it from them. I'm thinking, so this is a life.
Yeah, you never know what people are, going through, or the opposite. Like they could seem like they're, somebody could have nothing and they could be happy, the happiest person
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
it's all perspective.
So if you were to write your next book, what would it be about?
I am looking, so as I mentioned, I'm really interested in altered states of consciousness. So psychedelics and breath work and meditation and hypnagogia, which is that state between sleep and
Hmm.
wakefulness.
Hmm.
And so these states are really healing for us, actually. And so I'm looking into the research around that. I'm also interested in how, like, actually in our field, there's a huge gap between neuroscience and psychology, and like they don't really talk to each other that well. So
Hmm.
I'm really interested in like how do you actually heal people and what does that mean? But pulling in spiritual practices. So
Hmm.
I'm kind of looking at that
Hmm.
through personally trying all this stuff.
So
So
are you liable to take some DMT?
yeah, I actually did
Uh-oh.
in
Oh man.
January.
What? Well, let us know, man. What happened?
Yeah. I I died. And then I became the entire universe, all of space and time, the whole thing. So I didn't exist anymore. My self disappeared, and then I just became the entire universe. I saw all of it. I was all of it. So it was very transcendent and incredible. And when I came back down to earth, I was so grateful to be alive. I was so grateful to be alive. Like, and the only thing I thought of in the experience when I thought I had died was my friends and family. And, I felt all of that, like, oh my God, I didn't get to say goodbye. So I felt all that. So when I came back, that was a realization for me that I thought I died, and the only thing I thought about were the people that I love, the connections that I have. I didn't think about my accomplishments, my achievements, my
Hmm.
belongings,
Hmm.
nothing. It was just the people. Um, so it was, I woke up grateful. I mean, I still wake up grateful, as I mentioned, but I mean, after that
Hmm.
trip, I was like kissing the ground. Like I was so, so happy.
So it was so much fun nearly dying. You want to do it again?
Yeah, I think It's kind of what you said too, right? Like near death experiences. It was a near death experience.
Mhm.
So I think that these states, while sometimes challenging, if you want to look at it that way, they ultimately bring a lot of gifts and a lot of
Hmm. Hmm.
perspective, and I think they're
Well,
extremely valuable.
now I'm sure you considered the dangers involved in such activity. I mean, I had one guest on the show that went down that route, and we were discussing how that he met other people that were out there, and he said that he had the ability to go into somebody return to another body that wasn't even his. So I don't know
Oh
if
dear.
that you may not have got to that point. I don't even know who's out there. Could be a one-off situation, but there's
Right.
that, and then you know you could literally die. I mean, so how do you? Where's your safeguard at here, Mona?
Um, well, with so psychedelics are actually pretty safe. Believe me, I'm a type A scientist, so I did my research.
Okay.
I mean, not only did I read all the papers, but I interviewed a lot of people before I did anything. So yeah, they're not addictive and they're actually pretty safe. I mean, there's a few contraindications with, things like SSRIs, but I'm not, I was careful, but
Mm-hmm.
there's very few deaths. The biggest, I think, I'm sorry, risk is
Mm-hmm.
if you tend to be on the spectrum, possibly for psychotic symptoms, it could trigger those. So they, usually if you go someplace safe, they'll screen for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, believe me, I did my research. I was
Well,
like,
I got some more.
yeah.
I got some more research for you. Somebody in the live chat said they tried it and they had bad entities tormenting them for hours.
Well, hours on DMT. Oh,
I'm not sure what they took, but here's the question
interesting.
though. Yeah, yeah, it was DMT. Um, so I mean, yeah, I
Yeah, there's
yikes.
always a risk, of course, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to go into another realm as a scientist, kind of like again back to the contact Jodie Foster. She wanted to go out in space to see our space creators and come back. Now she was able to come back, but when she came back, as you know the story goes, she didn't have any proof, and it was
Oh.
quite the twist because she says to believe in God, she required proof in the beginning, and in the end,
Mm.
she couldn't offer any proof that she went anywhere to see anybody out there in Space Command. So you, as a scientist, you might go out there into some other dimension or realm, but when you come back, somebody's going to say, "Well, you were just on drugs, narcotics,
True.
psychedelics. That's not any kind of proof at all. How would you offer proof that these things indeed happened to you?"
Yeah, I mean it'll be difficult, but I do say with regard to psychedelic trips. So sometimes on psychedelic trips, people get information that turns out to be true, and that's one way that you can verify it for other people. So for example, ayahuasca is an
Mm-hmm.
indigenous brew that a lot of people have in South America. And so there's been many reports on ayahuasca. You're like deep in the jungle and no communication with like the world. But they'll, see a spirit or whatever you want to call it. They'll see somebody they know who has come and
Mm-hmm.
says like, goodbye, or tell, Uncle um, Jim that the lighter that he's looking for is under the seat in the study or something like that. And they'll
Mm-hmm.
be on their way. And then the person comes out and they're like, that was weird. And in their mind, that person is alive. But then they go home, find out the person passed away at the same time they took the
Mm-hmm.
trip. And then they give the message to the uncle, they find the lighter. And that's what you call a veridical event. Like it's a verifiable, if the information you get is true. And there's many, many stories like this
Mm-hmm.
from psychedelic trips and from other states, altered
Mm-hmm.
states of consciousness. And I think those stories are important because they do show that sometimes, at least sometimes, you're tapping into some information that
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't have had access to otherwise, and it's true.
uh, alter states could also be considered in the near death experience where people say they float above their bodies, but then and they're maybe dead, clinically dead, but they'll come back to life and they'll say exactly what people were saying and
Yes.
doing. So
Yeah,
that
exactly.
sounds like sort of somebody could say that's a
Yes.
altered state there.
Yes, absolutely.
And I would think somebody had that experience would also be thankful they were able to come back.
Yes. Yeah. these things really put things into perspective.
Now, did you know, being a scientist, that 25% of all near-death experiences are near-hell experiences?
I did not know that.
Yeah, where people come back and they had in fact, I've had numbers of people on the show that were rabid atheists that had near death and came back, but said the reason it wasn't because they were shown, for those people, it wasn't because they were shown a heaven situation, it's because they went to a hell situation and they thought, I don't want to go there. So when they come back to life, their life is completely changed.
That's interesting. I mean, same outcome, I guess, right? Still positive outcome when they come back, but challenging experience, I'm sure.
Well, that's another thing, because I was saying earlier, I'd rather not have a near-death experience, especially if it's a horror show like that, because what if you check out and that locks you in? I mean, we're talking about the people who came back. Not everybody who dies on the table has a near death. Sometimes it's actual death. Right, so where do you think you go when you die?
Wow. Where do we go? I think, honestly, I experienced death on my DMT trip, and it wasn't that bad, guys. You just became the whole universe. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it because I liked that experience. So I hope that's what happens.
Okay. Well, Mona, we're getting near the end of the broadcast. What would you like to tell the people, kind of wrapping this thing up in our conversation?
Yeah. Just as I mentioned before, I think that, I mean, for me personally, it's to stay open-minded and to stay curious. My new personal mantra is stay radically curious and just keep learning and listening to other people's perspectives. And, I thought I had it all right with my previous worldview, and now I think I was short-sighted, so now I just want to keep learning. But I do, and I just encourage people to embrace the mystical and the spiritual and lean into it.
And we mentioned earlier, or I mentioned earlier, about the people in prison and how their lives were changed by accepting Jesus and that. So you can put that in your quiver. That if you're dealing with people, maybe somebody will seek you out and say, I need a change in my life, and I've tried several things. That's just another thing you can tell them. Say, there is that, and I say there's proof, because changed lives is proof enough for me. I mean, especially if you got a hardened criminal or a hater of some kind, and their life completely changes. Something is changing that. That's some kind of spiritual phenomena, as far as I'm concerned, that's affecting them in a positive way.
Absolutely. I will put that in my quiver.
All righty. All right. Before we let you go, let's check our poll question. How much spiritual activity is happening in your life? Choices are none at all. Happens every day. Can't tell what's happening. Does demonic activity count? Let's see what we got. All right. We went up there, Bona. 90% of the people respondents say spiritual things are happening every day. 4%, that went down. 4% say nothing at all. But then again, we got 4% said can't tell what's happening. Well, we're going to pray for them. We're going to lift them up in our prayers. You remember we were talking earlier how we pray for somebody else first. So we're going to pray for them people that can't tell what's happening, and then we'll ask God to help us understand what's happening in our lives too. All right. Well, Mona Sobhani, I appreciate you coming on the Edge broadcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, we'll let you go.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. That was Mona Sobhani talking about proof of spiritual phenomena. And